Welcome to a very special video with Dr. Bert McCarty, Dr. Fred Yelverton, to explain some practices we may need to observe during the COVID-19 period. So the goal is to give superintendents across the Carolinas and the beach, the Midlands, the Piedmont, and the mountains advice on what they can, should, or might do to prepare their courses for closure, or even more critically, how they should focus operations if they're forced to reduce staff to a bare minimum. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Bert McCarty.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Fred also for taking this time out to do this. Anyway, obviously these are interesting times, and our objective, like just mentioned, is trying to figure out ways to save golf course money and labor costs, yet not let the golf course go to pot, obviously. And so Fred and I will try to share some ideas and experiences along this line, and so I'm kind of asked Dr. Yelverton some questions, and let's hear some excellent response from him. So, Fred, obviously, again, to saving money, first thing I was going to talk about is a lot of golf courses, especially on the coast of Carolinas, have gone back to overseeding. Maybe not wall to wall, but certainly greens, tees, and fairways. And obviously, having to maintain that ryegrass when there's very few golfers may or may not be the smartest thing to do. What would be your thoughts as far as what courses that have overseeded extensively should be doing or considering for the next couple of weeks to try to reduce this labor cost?
Well, it's going to be a real challenge, obviously, and there are no easy answers. But the one thing that comes to mind with cool season grasses, Bert, is loaded up with Primo. Cool season grasses are doing their thing right now. And one of the best ways to save labor is to reduce mowing, right?
Sure.
So is at the height of I think most of the data will show at the height of Primo effect, you can reduce growth by 50%. So theoretically, at the peak, you can reduce mowing by half. I think the thing, and Bert, you may want to chime in here, but reducing mowing is going to work, but you may want to get back to these fundamentals about you don't want to remove more than a third. Remember, that's basic turf 101, right? Don't ever remove more than a third of the plant material when you're mowing. Now, if you do that, you do remove more than a third. You're going to get into some scalping situations. The other thing I'm concerned about too with Primo, just to put a caveat there, Bert, before we forget to mention this, is that remember, it's got to have repeat applications every 4 weeks or you'll get that rebound effect. So I'm assuming most courses in the Carolinas are going to have a skeleton crew to maintain them, in a minimum way. So I would say just put on the calendar every 4 weeks to load it up with Primo. And, this is going to apply to Bermuda grass too, once, depending on how long this goes, right? But Bermuda grass is a ways away from being hit with Primo.
All right, well, some courses, and it varies, some courses are only allowed to get on there, or the maintenance personnel are only allowed to get on courses 1 or 2 days a week. Should they go ahead and remove the ryegrass chemically?
I would.
Yeah, I would too.
I would give it. I would give it very strong consideration. I mean, what's the ryegrass there for? It's there for aesthetics, to attract golfers in. If you're not having a lot of golfers. Maintaining ryegrass is, as you know, is a high maintenance, pretty high maintenance this time of year, right? So that would be an option, I think, is to go ahead and get the ryegrass out.
Yeah, I agree, and hopefully save from having to lay sod in June when your Bermuda grass is trying to green up if you wait later than today. And so my suggestion is use metsulfuron at a 1/2 ounce per acre, knowing this would take about 2 weeks thereabouts to kick in. So maybe do it the week before Easter, because I know it might still be a big play time, but then knowing after that the ryegrass will disappear and they'll be back managing or trying to green up their Bermuda grass. So, suggestion.
and you know, I think what just a word of caution there too about using the sulfonylureas to take out ryegrass is, you know, they're very temperature dependent. And you know, when Revolver, Monument, all those things came out, Bert, as you recall, people we learned the hard way you can't apply them in cold weather and take out ryegrass. So you know, I mean, we're pretty chilly here this morning.
Yeah,
We're in
I
the low
mean,
30s.
sure. Anytime you're below 60, the stuff goes almost stop as far as working. But I think that's the safer way of going versus playing around with some of these non-selects. Any comments?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would just catch it on a warm day. Catch it on a warm day and use one of the sulfonylureas. And I would just make sure, you know, one of the ones, you know, you mentioned metsulfuron, Revolver, Monument, Katana, all those things will work. I would also keep in mind to, you know, if it is a little bit, you know, it's a little bit early. Well, it's a lot earlier than we normally take them out. Ryegrass is really, really competitive right now. So, Bert, what do you think? It may take 2 applications.
It may, and again, it's back to what you're saying. It's all temperature dependent, and if we stay in cold weather, you know, it's just the ryegrass will just sit there until we start hitting some 60+ degree days and nights. And so you're right. By the time that happens, it may take 2 applications.
Yeah, and one thing too about your herbicide selection there, part of it depends, I think, on what else do you have in there. Like if you have POA in there, you want to get that out. Metsulfuron is not going to be your choice. It would be Revolver, Monument, or Katana, one of those 3, or rimsulfuron now, right? That'll take it out too. And there's all kinds of formulations.
I'll tell you the other weed issue you might want to consider be the nut sedges. If you have nut sedges from all the rain we've had the last 6 months, then, you know, Monument obviously would probably rise to the top as far as if you're trying to control ryegrass, POA, and nut sedges. That would, in theory, take care of all 3 of them.
And Kalinga's up and growing now for us, so
Sure.
it's starting to come out. So that would influence your decision as well.
Okay, let's shift to golf courses that have not overseeded extensively, maybe just greens and a couple of tee tops. You mentioned the Primo or Ternat Spec F a while ago. Bermuda grass greening up, how would you handle that, assuming most of us have not fully greened up yet?
Yeah, I mean, it's too early for Primo. I mean, we discussed this, you know, in our seminars in the past, Bert, and, you know, we get this question occasionally about using Primo on Bermuda on warm season grasses. It's not fully greened up. I'm just not a fan of it. I wouldn't do it now. Would you? I mean, I think you gotta get it fully greened up and actively growing to make that happen. So I would say one good thing about the transition phase now is it doesn't need mowing very much.
Yeah.
So
I agree. With Primo, I mean, these cool nights would be the natural growth regulator in itself, and so there's really no need to add an artificial one until we start getting a few warmer nights. And that typically is not going to happen until mid to late April or later. So,
yeah, I think when Bermuda gets fully greened up and, you know, it starts kicking in, that's when I would start your plant growth regulator applications on it. Until then, I just wouldn't do it. Now, obviously, you know, you don't want to be pushing. I don't think you want to be pushing it at all either, right? I just think you want to sit back and let it green up normally, and, you know, not push that Bermuda grass out of dormancy.
I've been telling people I would use maybe half my normal spring fertilizer in terms of nitrogen and potassium, just like I said, not to obviously create another problem. But, you know, we had the weakest point of Bermuda grass life cycle. It's green up at the expense of roots and rhizomes.
Right.
And so I just wouldn't starve the plants, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Certainly don't need to push them, but I wouldn't just bone starve them to death either.
Yeah, you know, a lot of it depends on what you do with your pre-emerge. You know, did you have any fertilizer on your pre-emerge? I'll tell you something else too. It also depends on, I think, what you fertilized with late last fall.
Sure.
You know, that all comes into the equation about how much you use this spring. I think you're right, though. I think I would agree. You you don't want to push it, but you don't want to starve it either. So, and I think it's kind of hard to make a blanket recommendation because it depends on what courses have done last fall, what they put on, did they use Ronstar, Neutralene or something, back in, and again, or what fertilizer did they use for the pre-emergence? It was a lot of Ronstar and this year, there's a big question. Bermuda never went dormant enough to spray Ronstar. So we had to put Ronstar out. For those using Ronstar, we had to put it out on a fertilizer or a dry carry, not necessarily whether it was 007 or whether it was with Neutralene or whatever it was. We a lot of it switched to a fertilizer carrier. So that comes into play.
Okay, back to PGRs. I've been getting a lot of questions. I'm sure you have too about plateau. Would that fit into our springtime use on non-overseeded Bermuda grass?
Yeah, I don't know. I tell you, during green up, I'd be careful with that one. That one can, if you mess up with that, you can keep it dormant till about August 1st if you're not careful. That might solve your mowing problems, but I'd just be careful with that one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I tell kind of like Primo, let the grass green up before you do anything.
Right.
The difference between plateau and Primo in terms of the results is plateaus will stop the grass from growing. And Primo
Yes, it will.
Primo slow it down, obviously about 50%. Plateau stops it, and that may or may not be what the course is after, but understand that's how plateau works. Keep the rates conservative, 2 to 3 ounces on fairways and roughs. Got to minimize overlaps and skips, or your sins will be shown with plateau much more than even Primo.
Yes, it will. It's much less forgiving.
It's a powerful product, and you have to respect it. If not, bad things can and will happen. And it'll run too, so you don't want to put it between 20 or 30 feet of any desirable cool season grasses for those who might still have bent grass or some desirable overseeding somewhere.
Exactly. And just a reminder, plateau is a herbicide. So we use it as a plant growth regulator at a sublethal herbicide rate. Primo is not a herbicide. It's a plant growth regulator. So the issue with plateau is it's a plant growth regulator at low rates. You get the rate up, it's a herbicide. So primarily plateau is a herbicide.
Sure.
So just be careful with it, with the overlaps and things like that. So it's going to be a little less forgiving than something like Primo.
Yeah, and I want to reemphasize that one more time. Plateau is a very powerful product. It works. Mm-hmm. It can work almost too good. Keep those rates conservative. Like I say, 2 to 3 ounces on fairways, maybe 3 to 4 on roughs, but no more than that until you are comfortable with the product and application and those other parameters associated with it. All right, other ways to save money. How about bunkers? What's your thoughts on maintaining bunkers to the typical standards that we do before all this came about?
Well, I tell you what, bunkers are always they're
a touch of
bunkers and Thanks for asking that question, Bert. Bunkers and collars are poison. There's some things not to make light of it's an important question, but I think that's going to come back to the individual superintendent and what they can tolerate. I don't know if you can make any sweeping comments on that. Do you?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. It's up to the individual course and their membership and what they demand. And obviously, if you can cut back on raking or edging bunkers, do it as much as possible. That obviously is a big labor suck. And so you're right. It's more of an individual course decision, but certainly an area that if you have latitude, you want to try to minimize your maintenance in it because it's so high maintenance.
Yeah. I think bunkers come into that a little bit, and this is a general statement that comes into the more detailed areas of golf course maintenance, right? to a degree, not, but and that's what you're having to give up on here is the detail for courses. That's where you're going to have to save labor. You just want to maintain them until things get back to normal, and don't do anything. You don't want to do anything in this period that causes irreparable harm, right? So you gotta let some of the details go.
Yeah, I think the native areas for those courses who have those are kind of fall in that same category. It's just they can be more native than maybe they normally are, and so you just have to let them go. And waste bunkers and waste areas, you got to make decisions. I think those are one of the first ones to go.
Yeah, and Bert, just to circle back on something real quickly, we let's don't leave the guys out in the highlands up in western North Carolina and South Carolina. They got cool season grasses. They're waking up now too. So a lot of that Primo talk we had earlier and plant growth regulator talk, we shouldn't just confine it to Trinexapac, but that's those guys are waking up now. So I think the reduced mowing, reduce your staff. That's your maintenance costs. Primo and things like that are important for those courses.
Yeah, and I think iron or color versus nitrogen,
Right.
For those guys as well as other people, very important. And I think that's the alternative until we get through this. So they're going to have to look at it.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard. And just to put a caveat to everything we're saying, it varies quite a bit across the Carolinas. I mean, some people are some are business as usual, right? Some are reducing staff, some are shutting down. I mean, it's all over the map. I think the resort courses, where those are the ones that probably are shutting down the most, right? As a general rule. So that's something to consider.
All right, Fred, we've had some very good topics we discussed. Any other burning issues or areas you think we should be covering?
Well, we haven't talked about anything green specific. I mean, I was thinking about it. Isn't it a good time to for those with bent grass? It's going to be a good time to go ahead and aerify, right? I mean, I mean, that takes labor, but at least you don't have as many golfer in some situations. Some you do. I mean, that brings up another question too. I've been out on a couple of golf courses last week. There was a lot of play out there. I think as people get cabin fever, they're going to want to get out. I saw people out playing with their kids, and their kids were running around, and so cabin fever is going to come into play here.
I agree. I know one of our local golf courses over the weekend, I rode by in the park lot, was slam full. And so I know that's not everybody, but I hate to give up aerification because I know the long-term effects of doing that. And it's very subtle, but they occur. And so if you have that leeway and able to aerify, maybe double aerify and skip the one in May or early summer or something like that. If that's a possibility for the amount of play that you currently have.
Well, again, as a general comment, you want to just fall back on the fundamentals, and aerification is a fundamental. So, I wouldn't give up on that. I would, and again, I know it takes labor, may not be able to do it, but I would. That we've talked about some things you can do. We haven't talked about things you should stop. And I think as one of them, I don't think you should stop that. I think you should, because that's a fundamental turf grass management practice.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add, Fred?
I don't know. I can't. It's trying times, and I think, we're offering just some things to think about. I'd be willing to bet most people have already thought about these things, but I would just encourage people to stick to the fundamentals and get away from the details, and and just keep it where when you do open back up, you can hit the ground running. Other than that, I mean, I don't have any words of wisdom other than that.
You're correct. I think most people who normally would view this type video understand most of the points we're talking about, but the members don't. And so it might be an educational tool for some of their members also. So that would also be the benefit of this.
Yeah, maybe if it helps, they can send this to their members.
Yeah, could be. Well, I think that's all we really had to cover, unless there's something else. And I think we're out of time anyway. And so, Fred, thanks so much. Take your time out and getting out of your pajamas and coming and doing this. And so we'll wrap it up from here, guys. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. This will be great information to get out to the Carolinas members. Good luck with the evacuating your office, and use your time wisely. Dr. Yelverton, I look forward to meeting you in person sometime. I don't think we've ever met. But,
yeah, same here. Thanks for doing this, and wish everybody the best out there, and we'll get through this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.